All right. Thank you guys for joining us on another episode of Extreme Health Radio. We got Dr. Pieter DeWet on the show. This is going to be a really fascinating show, and I hope you guys enjoy it. It is one of the sort of healing modalities that I am a big fan of, and I think it might be at the root cause of all disease and all illness. Let me just read from Dr. DeWet's page here. It's really interesting. We're going to be talking about recall healing. And some of the themes addressed in recall healing are: why am I sick and how can I encourage my recovery? Why do my problems reoccur? Might it be memorized cellular biological cycles? Could illness be the brain's ideal solution to help you survive a traumatic event? What is the emotional or psychological shock behind my illness or problematic behavior? And it continues to go on. And the idea is that there are invisible processes that could be transgenerational that play a role in all of our disease. And the way we're looking at diseases like heart attack, cancer, tumors, the way we're looking at these things is upside down. And usually that's the way it is, right? Everything in society, everything in culture is usually the opposite is the truth, right? So, in this case, the heart attack is the body's attempt to heal itself. The cancer tumor is the body's attempt to do healing. So it really makes you think like, okay, well, if the heart attack is the body's healing, why would it kill someone, right? Why would you die? Why would someone die of a tumor? So these are all questions addressed in recall healing. We're going to bring Dr. DeWet on the show, and we're going to talk about some of these deeper core issues. It could be the root cause of why we're all sick and why people are getting sick. It could be a very, very deep subject. So let me bring up really quickly, I want to give you guys an update on what's going on with Extreme Health Radio. And you can see some of the guests we have coming up. We've got some really cool guests. Today, obviously, Dr. Pieter DeWet, recall healing, and he titled it, "The Issues Are in Your Tissues." Kind of reminds me of what yoga teachers say: the issues are in your tissues. Tomorrow, we're going to have Phil Wilson on. We're going to be talking about the benefits of sauna therapy. On Wednesday, we're going to be talking with Bob Greska about carbon-60. Did you know that carbon-60, there are studies showing a 95% increase in lifespan in mice with carbon-60? Is that crazy or what? So the question is does that translate to humans? So we'll talk to Bob about that. And then Thursday, we're going to have Dr. Will Falconer on the show. He's also in Texas. A lot of people from Texas today, or this week. We're going to be talking about natural and holistic pet care. So that should be really, really good. And then on Friday, we have Jason Prawl. He just wrapped up. I don't know the name of his documentary. It's called something about longevity, but we're going to be talking about anti-aging, longevity secrets, and some really, really interesting information. But before we get started, I wanted to tell you guys quickly about the Extreme Health Academy. If you guys haven't signed up or joined, this month is all about heart health. Speaking of that, every single month we release new courses, new course content. We've done autoimmune diseases, and these are like high-level 3-4 hour courses, right? Autoimmune diseases, prevent and heal cancer, building invincible immunity, the guide to improving digestion, balancing hormones. These are all courses that we release every single month. So if you guys want to join the Extreme Health Academy, we're partnering with Dr. John Bergman, which is why we're also streaming to his YouTube channel right now. So thank you, Dr. Bergman, for that. And if you guys are watching over there on Dr. Bergman's YouTube channel, you can enter the code Bergman14 and get a free 14-day trial. Or if you're an Extreme Health Radio fan, you can type in EHR14 and get a free 14-day trial, and that will give you a free 14 days to dive into all of this stuff and see if it's for you and see how it's going to change your life. So today we've got Dr. Pieter DeWet on the show, and let me just read a little bit about him and what he's up to. He graduated medical school in 1985. He was at the University of Pretoria in South Africa and has been a family physician since 1991. And he's recently sort of moved out of traditional medicine and working with patients on life coaching and recall healing. He was telling me this before the show. But there's an interesting quote on his website, and let me read this to you. It's interesting. He has this on PieterDeWet.com. He says, Dr. Claude Sabat, the father of total biology, which is one of the healing sciences that recall healing was derived from, has been quoted as saying, disease is the brain's best solution to keep the person alive for as long as possible. Therefore, disease is a survival program. So it's crazy. Everything we're doing and everything we're thinking about is opposite of what it's really meant to be, right? So let me bring in Dr. DeWet on the show. And he is also wearing red today. We didn't coordinate this at all, but how are you, Doc? Oh, whoops. Let me turn your audio up. How are
Yep.
you, Doc?
I'm doing good. Are you able to hear me?
I hear you. Perfect. Yeah, we must be brothers
Okay.
today because we've got the same earbuds and the same shirt on. It's great. So you're in Tyler, Texas, still? Is that right?
That's right. I'm still living in Northeast Texas, beautiful part of Texas.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And I was sharing with you before the show about some of the other people we've had on about recall healing and some really deep work. And I first got introduced to recall healing by Dr. Richard Massey, who's been on the show, and I believe you might know him as well. And
I do. Yeah,
yeah, he's got a
he's a great guy.
great and eloquent way of describing all this stuff, doesn't he?
Yep, he's a very colorful personality, and has been on the forefront of fighting some of the political battles too here in Texas. So he's been through a lot. To help people, still have access to options,
Hmm.
integrative options.
Yeah, yeah, he's a great guy, good friend of the show. Um, so in terms of recall healing, we did a show with you all the way back, I think on, let me just look at my notes if people are interested, episode 161, or no, 128, I think a long time ago, a few years ago. So a lot of people that are watching now probably don't know what recall healing was, and heard me say in the intro that the heart attack is the body's ability, or the body's trying to create new homeostasis and heal itself, and it seems so counterintuitive. Um, but just give people a brief update on what's going on with recall healing, what it is, and why it's such a unique and exciting sort of modality of looking at disease and illness for people.
Well, it's very interesting. Um, there's a physician, Dr. Reiki Hammer, who made some key discoveries in the late 70s, that helped us start gaining a much different, understanding of disease. And it started with his own experience with cancer. After he lost his son, to a very tragic event. His son was, in basically shot, you point blank
Wow.
by a Italian prince. And it's a very sordid story.
Jeez.
But after his son got shot and was struggling, to stay alive, Dr. Hammer worked, as a physician. He was a very, very famous physician at the time in Germany. Went to retrieve his son, and did everything he could to save his son's life. Didn't work. So 3 months later, his son died, perished, and Dr. Hammer developed a testicular cancer in the in the aftermath of that. So in light of the cancer, Dr. Hammer had some understandings about what might be at work here. He didn't just accept the fact that he got cancer out of nowhere. Thought there might be a connection between the tragedy that befell him and this particular event that took place, the loss of his son. And, interestingly enough, at the time, he also was an expert in neuroscience, so, in neurology as well as psychiatry.
Mm-hmm.
He was also a theologian, and, so he was wearing many hats that helped him to gain an understanding that this was basically a defense mechanism in play. That as I explain in my book, Heal Thyself, in the section on recall healing, so he basically discovered when he did a CAT scan that there was a lesion in the brain in the very area that controlled the testicles. that was congruent with the conflict of the loss of his son. But what was most amazing is that the cancer, disappeared, resolved, after he came to some of these understandings and, resolved some of that severe stress within himself. Because, basically for about 8 months, he was having a hard time, like most people that go through a big loss or a big stress. In his case, it took about 8 months of sleeplessness, not eating normally, cold hands and feet, all the signs of severe stress in the physical body,
Mm-hmm.
before he started coming to terms with the loss. And by, connecting these two things, the loss and the disease, there was actually a miracle that took place. The disease resolved without the typical treatments, which would be chemo, radiation, and surgery, even at that time. So
Right, right.
he did have a biopsy of the tumor, so it definitely was cancer, no doubt. And testicular cancer is typically a very aggressive cancer if you don't treat it with, if you don't treat it with those elements, the chemo, the radiation, and the removal of the tumor itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that was an amazing outcome. But the other uh, element in the story is that he was working at a cancer center in Germany at the time, and was
Wow.
seeing a lot of breast cancer patients. And so he started getting histories from each of these patients suffering from breast cancer, and looking at their CAT scans, the brain CAT scans. And lo and behold, he found, with each and every one of these patients, that they all had stories that resonated with the cancer. So he started creating, through his understandings and his research, maps of the brain, and maps of the conflicts, and the link with, different illnesses and disease processes. And, so this basically, is the body of work that he created. He actually wrote a PhD dissertation on, German New Medicine, as he called it. He originally called it German medicine,
Mm-hmm.
but then added the new in there, German New Medicine. And so basically helped us, understand, the, you know, illness at a whole nother level. Um, so Dr. Renault indirectly was a student of Dr. Um, Hammer
Mm-hmm.
through another physician, Dr. Claude Sabat. And Claude Sabat was a French physician that took Dr. Hammer's understandings to a whole new level, and
Wow.
added other discoveries, other elements to it that allowed us to understand that not only was there always a trigger, to every illness, shortly before the illness appeared, but there was also, you know, typically a program, what we call a programming conflict earlier in life,
Mm-hmm.
that appeared that didn't make the person sick at that point, um, but nevertheless, contributed to the illness later in life. So,
So, Doc, when you
um,
say there's a trigger, what does, like you said, there's always a trigger. And is there a trigger for, or I guess the question is there a trigger for every disease? Or what about things like, lesser known things, like if you're going to, running down the street and you break your arm, or a headache or something like that? But, it makes sense that there would be triggers for catastrophic sort of degenerative diseases. But are there triggers for just about everything that happens to us, do you think?
yeah, that's kind of a very interesting question, because normally we think that illness is random, and we think of accidents as being random, bad
Yeah.
luck,
Yeah.
as most people want to call it.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, when we look at, even accidents, and the, whatever happens to someone,
Uh-huh.
if they break a leg, for example, in an accident, number one, we can look at what happened, shortly before the accident in their life, And we can also look at where the injury took place in the body. And so there's elements, um, that we can follow to gain a deeper understanding on both ends. So the location of the injury, for example, and the story that preceded the the injury. There's all kinds of stories that and I think anybody that has had a calamity befall them can gain an understanding if they just simply look at their life shortly before. And it's interesting because we again have to understand, in my book Heal Thyself, there's what's called the two phases of disease chart. So we need to understand that so the disease process doesn't necessarily immediately start when the stress starts. It actually often is the opposite. It's when the stress ends that we go into a healing phase or a recovery phase, and that's when the symptoms start. So if you look at somebody that gets sick with the flu, paradoxically, they don't get sick when they have the flu. They get sick, after, after the stress has dissipated. So when they go on vacation, for example, then all of a sudden they're sick, and you've heard that probably many times. It's like
Oh yeah.
people get so frustrated. They go on vacation and then they spend the whole vacation trying to get over, a cold or the flu, or they go, on a cruise and they get diarrhea. Everybody blames the ship,
Right.
and the ship staff, for the contamination
Right. Right.
with viruses. But there's more to the story. Otherwise everybody would get sick, and everybody doesn't get sick. So you
I
have
know.
one person with the flu walking into a room with 100 people. Why is it that not everybody gets sick? Maybe one or two, even though they're all exposed to the virus. That's being sprayed through the air and through droplets, for example.
Uh-huh.
So you can always look at those that get ill and understand, what that trigger was that brought that about.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because with me, I know this has happened quite a few times where, you're planning for a trip, vacation. We have family in Australia, so we go there, and we typically will go there in the wintertime here, so it's summertime there, and we'll get sick right away, or right the night before we leave, or the minute we get off the plane, we get sick, and we think these things are random, but they're really not, right?
Well, exactly. So with every symptom, so we can tell what the story might be. We have through the body of work that's been produced by Dr. Halmer, Dr. Sabah, Dr. Renaud, and many others that have contributed. We're gaining a deeper and deeper understanding of every condition, every disease process. And then even those random things, as we just touched on, accidents, that happen. And some people out there might say, what about when a whole bunch of people get injured, at the same time, or die in a horrific accident, airliner that drops out of the sky, or 9/11, so even there, we can gain an understanding of the programming that affects entire groups of people. So there's even biological cycles that run that we can gain an understanding of. Not just within our own bodies, in our own existence, but even as a nation, we see, that. Sorry, I just had something pop
Oh,
up
no
on my
problem.
computer.
Yeah, no, I wanted to ask you when it comes to, like, let's take the heart attack for example. A lot of people think that the heart attack is the actual disease, when in reality, when it seems like it's the healing phase. And so the first thought that a lot of people would have is like, why would the body do this? Why would the body attempt to heal itself by having a heart attack? and then it ends up dying. It seems so counterintuitive because we're looking at everything in our culture opposite of the way it most likely works. And so let's take the case of like a heart attack, and maybe we'll do like the case of a cancer after that. But in the case of a heart attack, how is that the body's attempt to heal itself, do you think?
Well, yeah, there's some interesting research done by associates of Dr. Harmer. Dr. Harmer denies that he actually was the one that did this research. But for example, they took dogs in an experiment, or a dog, and put that dog in a territory that was a very desirable area,
Uh-huh.
out in the open, with lots and lots of food, available to that animal. And then one day they took that animal, put him in a cage, enclosure with a chain link fence around, so he could still see the outside, but wasn't able to leave that enclosure.
Okay.
Stopped feeding him, all the food that he was getting. He got some rations, to stay alive. But instead, they put another dog out in the field, and so another dog was enjoying that freedom and was enjoying, all the good food right
Uh-huh.
in front of this dog that was, in the enclosure.
Okay.
What happened is, so that poor dog stayed in that enclosure for months, and after a certain number of months, they one day they took the other dog away from the enclosure, outside, and let that dog free. So the dog, was able to run around again, and access all that good food. Lo and behold, 24 hours later, that animal had a massive heart attack and died. So in other words, the dog, while he was in captivity, you could say, in that enclosure, and had lost his freedom and had lost his access to the privileges that he had before, developed a massive conflict of lost territory. So we see the same thing happening in human beings. In um, Kenneth Lay, the CEO of Enron, for example. I don't know if you remember Enron.
Oh yeah.
It was that was a huge scandal. I think in the early 1990s or something.
I remember that.
Um,
Yeah.
and that company went down the tubes. Supposedly they were. Um, oops, sorry.
No worries. Yeah, I remember that. Enron, that was a big, big deal. It's a massive news story.
Yeah, and so I just want to put my phone on airplane mode. So,
No worries.
um,
So you were,
so
yeah, Kenneth Lay, I think you were talking about?
yeah, so Kenneth Lay basically was CEO of this company,
Uh-huh.
and he fell into disrepute, as you know, because he was blamed for the Enron scandal, and was taken to task by the U.S. government, um, and basically for fraud and all kinds of crimes. And so he went from a very famous guy that had a very high status in our society to somebody that had lost that status and was basically a pariah, was in the news all the time, being picked apart
Mm-hmm.
by the news media, and under massive stress financially. So even as wealthy as he was, he was looking at present time. He was looking at losing that freedom and losing, his fortune, and not only impacts on him but his family. His wife and children, and his entire family. So basically, he ended up finally going to trial after months and months and months. Actually, I think it was maybe 2 years before he finally went to trial. and was found guilty. You know, the good news though is, is that, if you think about it, one of the solutions to his dilemma was, to come to a final dispensation, a final conclusion, either
Mm-hmm.
guilty or not guilty, either getting his freedom back or know finally what was going to happen to him, and get out of this massive stress zone. So that's exactly what happened. He was found guilty. Um, was was basically awaiting sentencing. He knew that he was going to go to prison, but they had made some arrangements that he was going to go to a nice prison. So it was going to be so bad, and he wasn't going to have to spend that many years. So he knew that was coming down the pike.
Uh-huh.
But the final day of his life, he died of a massive heart attack. But the heart attack happened, as I understand it, in Colorado. And he was, standing right next to his beautiful house, with the most beautiful view, with his wife, and she had, continued to support him unconditionally,
Wow.
and so did his family. And so this was 24 to 48 hours after the conviction, as I understand it, and he had a massive heart attack and died on the spot. They were never able to resuscitate him. And if you look at the timeline, if somebody goes through a massive conflict of lost territory, which you could say symbolically, he lost his territory.
Right.
And in reality, I mean, he lost his company, he lost, lots of money, he
Right.
lost his reputation, and for a lot of us,
Mm-hmm.
reputation means a whole lot. And for some people, it's reputation is everything.
Mm-hmm.
They lose that, then um, that creates a massive stress, from the brain that, you know, to the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is it's almost like an earthquake in the brain. The brain that sends out a signal to the part of the body that's most congruent with the conflict. So if we think about the heart, the heart is pumps blood, and so when we're under stress and when we're having to fight for our territory, the heart has to pump out a whole lot more blood. So the first thing that the heart tries to do, and the brain tries to get the heart to do, is to increase blood flow to the heart by opening up the blood vessels. You actually get, if you looked at it under a microscope initially, ulceration of the coronaries. So it's like the coronaries are trying to open up more to allow more blood to get to the heart muscle that is having to work harder and that has to be ready to
Mm-hmm.
fight. And then voila, like it always happens, at some point the stress shuts down. At some point a solution arrives. Sometimes time is the solution. Sometimes something else happens, but there's always a solution. You know, and if you think about it, death is the ultimate solution. So if you are totally overwhelmed and massively stressed, then that's the final solution
Right.
um, for all of us. So, but in the case of the heart, when the stress, the conflict of lost territory finally starts dissipating, that's when we kick into healing phase, and that ulceration in the inside of the blood vessels starts, reversing, and we actually get cell multiplication on the inside of the blood vessels of the heart, the arteries, and then you get a clogged artery. You get, and you also get hypercoagulation, so the blood, starts becoming more sticky, the red blood cells, and you get a much greater, tendency towards clot formation. And then, that's the perfect setup for a massive heart attack.
Right.
And we can even tell by how long somebody has been in a massive conflict of so-called lost territory, what the end result is going to be. Dr. Hammer discovered that if somebody had been in a territory conflict for 8 months or longer, that very very often it would end up in a deadly heart attack. If they didn't have any no resuscitation available, no EMS ready at the ready to jumpstart them, and injection of anticoagulants and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where conventional medicine comes in. We do extraordinary things to help save lives and to help people continue on, to give them another chance. But if things took their natural course, if that stress was consistent for that period of time, it's very, very likely that they would die of a massive heart attack. If it's a shorter period of time, a month, or two, they may just have a little bit of chest pain and then feel better, not even go to the ER. If it's 3 or 4 months, then it may end up in more severe angina, and they may end up in the ER. So most people don't ever think about these stresses, because they're focused on the disease process, and nobody ever asks, what happened, what's been happening in your life lately, what's been going on, what is stressing you, and when we know a little bit about the connection between specific emotions and specific diseases, we can ask the right questions. That's the power of recall healing, is being able to track down, the story behind the disease process, help people gain deeper insight so that they can find a solution. And so in recall healing, we say there's one of two solutions, but the key is you claim it, you name it, you claim it, and you dump it, as Dr. Renaud says. So you name it, you claim it, and you dump it, and then let me just
no worries.
My printer off here in a moment.
No worries. You know what? I think we're going to do a quick little spot here for the Academy. If you guys want to join the show, the live shows are 10:45 a.m. Pacific time. So when we come back from the break here really quickly, I'm going to take some questions from the chat room. I'm going to answer the questions or ask the questions from the Extreme Health Radio chat room. So if you guys are listening on the Extreme Health Academy Facebook page or Dr. John Bergman's page, I can't manage all of the chat rooms, unfortunately. So I'm just going to stick to the Extreme Health Radio chat page. So if you have a question for Dr. DeWet, make sure to type them in all caps, and then I'll do my best to ask him the question after we get back from the break. I did want to tell you guys about this new program called Iris Software. Now, many of you guys probably know, you can see the glasses I'm wearing right now are designed to block blue light. But this program here, there's a lot of different mitigation strategies for blocking light from your life and blue light in particular. So obviously, you're going to want to make sure that you block light coming into your eyes. That's the best case scenario. But the reason why I have these glasses is because anytime you're exposed to light indoors, it doesn't have to be on a computer or a laptop. That's affecting our circadian biology. It's affecting our melatonin. It's affecting most importantly, our mitochondria, which controls genetic expression. And that's how we create ATP, through our mitochondria. And Dr. Doug Wallace, out of the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, he says that the most dangerous aspect of our current modern life is blue light. And how it affects us and how it affects our body's ability to heal. So that's why I've been using this Iris blue blocking software. It's $15 and it's the best software. It's the best solution to blue light on your computer. I used to use a program called Just Get Flux, and the problem with that one is that it's free, but it doesn't reduce the flicker rate. And we talked with Brian Hoyer just a few days ago about flicker rate and what that does to you. So Iris is able to mitigate the flicker rate as well as drop the entire Kelvin levels all the way down to 0. So you're getting 0 blue light at night. So if you want to increase your sleep, if you want to increase your hormones, if you want to improve your health in so many different ways, one of the most important things you could do is block blue light. So get this Iris blue blocking software. Get it on your iPad, get it on your phone, get it on your computer. It's indispensable. I could not work on the computer after sunset without this stuff. It's that good. And the other program or product I wanted to tell you guys about, if water is so important, my friends. If you're not drinking and bathing in pure water, that stuff is getting into you. And there's over 24,000 chemicals in the water, in municipal water. It's just unreal the amount of water that gets into our systems. Everything from homeopathic residues of chemotherapy and radiation, tampon residue, parasites and all kinds of different things. This all stuff, gets into your blood. This is how our blood is made, from water. The Omica 12-stage reverse osmosis water system is the one that we use. Become good friends with Rafi. He's the owner of Omica Organics and been using his products. And let's see here. Let me just show you a little bit about the Omica. It reduces, check this out, particles as small as 1/1000 micron, removes 99.9% of undesirable contaminants, up to 1,000 gallons. Here are some of the chemicals it reduces: aluminum, arsenic, chloramine, chromium, copper, lead, mercury. I don't even know what pentavalent is. Pentavalent. TDS, total dissolved solids, volatile organic compounds like benzene, chloroform, and gosh, I don't even know what this word, haloketones, haloketones, xylenes, fluoride, colloids, antimony, cadmium, as well as other substances too, like asbestos, bacteria, nitrates, nitrites, dirt, obviously odors, protozoa, radium, rust, viruses. All this stuff is lurking in the water you're drinking. And if you're bathing or taking showers, you're making basically a chloroform gas, and you're just sort of standing in a a shower filled with these chemicals floating around in the air and being reabsorbed into your skin. So get your water systems better optimized for your house. So we use the 12-stage Omica Organic water system. We also use their shower filters as well. And if you guys want to find out more about it, there's a discount code. You can email me, go to extremehealthradio.com, and you can go to the show page, or I'm sorry, the store, and you can check out more about the Omica Organics shower filter. Let's get back to Dr. Pieter DeWet, because this is really fascinating. And Dr. DeWet, let me make sure that I sort of understand this whole idea of a loss of territory, because I think it's fascinating. And so let me just make sure and correct me where I may have gone off. So in the case of the dog that has lost his territory, he gets taken out of his existing territory. He's given all the fresh raw meat and all the good food he wants. He gets taken out of that territory and gets put into a smaller sort of kennel kind of situation. He's barely fed, and he, in that situation, looks at another dog who's overtaken and taken his territory. And as a result of that stress, his arteries are literally digesting themselves in order to allow more blood flow and more oxygen to get through, because of the perceived fight that he's going to have to endure once he gets out. So he's thinking about all this. His arteries are digesting himself, and he's living that stress state. And that state is the actual disease of what's going on. But what happens is that dog gets out of his pen, and as soon as the door is open, he falls over of a heart attack. And we think, why did the heart attack kill him? But it's really an invisible process that happened before he regained his freedom. Is that anywhere near correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and
Okay.
the event, that the heart attack wouldn't happen immediately, but it will happen, in concordance with what's called the two phases of disease. So in my book, Heal Thyself, there's a chart, a two phases of disease chart that shows you that in order for an illness to occur, number one, you're going to go through, from balance to stress phase, or what we call conflict active phase. And then, for whatever period of time and whatever intensity, depending on the situation and depending on exactly what happened, you're going to go find a solution. At some point, a solution is going to appear, either naturally or because of intervention. And then that person goes into a healing phase. And there's two phases to that healing phase, a phase A and a phase B.
Okay.
And right in the middle of phase A is what we call the epileptoid crisis, or EC. So that EC, epileptoid crisis, these charts are somewhere in the middle of the book. But when you look at that chart, it almost looks like an EKG. It's paradoxical that when you look at the two phases of disease chart, it almost looks like somebody did an EKG on somebody because the ups and downs that you normally see
Uh-huh.
is congruent with what we see actually happen on a larger scale. In to someone when they're under severe stress, and then when they go into the healing phase. So the heart attack will tend to occur on that EC, the epileptoid crisis. Phase A of the healing phase is where the ulceration in the blood vessel is replaced by, cell proliferation. So cells start dividing and start healing those ulcerations that took place during the stress phase, and then and that can take anywhere from 48 hours in some instances to a longer period of time, depending on the organ system. In the case of the coronaries and the ulceration, you'll typically see that EC within 24 to 48 hours after the solution appears, and then when things come to a head. What's interesting too is if you ask people that have had heart attacks, or for that matter, other illnesses, if they had any other symptoms at the time of the heart attack, the
Mm-hmm.
chest pain. And if you ask them, go through the systems, they'll tell you that they also had a headache. So there's always a headache, in that area of the brain where the lesion occurs in the control center that controls the coronaries.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we're just talking about this one example, but every disease process has another part of the brain involved, a specific part of the brain involved,
Mm-hmm.
and it follows the anatomy of the brain as it relates to the different organs, and what happens in the tissues also varies depending on the type of stress, the organ system that is involved. And for instance, with cancers, you wanted to touch on cancer too. And, we know that certain cancers, for example, grow during the healing phase as well. So just like in the case of the coronaries, you'll have ulceration of an organ or a system during the conflict active phase, and then a repair phase where you get cell proliferation. So oftentimes when you diagnose, when a cancer is diagnosed, it's actually during that repair phase
Mm-hmm.
that that person becomes symptomatic, like in the case of ductal carcinomas in the breast. So ductal carcinoma is probably the most common breast cancer now.
Uh-huh.
Uh, not just because it maybe is occurring more often, but because we're looking for it more, all the time.
Right,
If you think
right,
about every woman out there,
right.
they're being advised to do mammograms yearly, annually, sometimes from age 35 onwards, or every 2 years until 50, and then every year after that. And
It's
and I'm
crazy.
not saying that's wrong. I'm not making that wrong. I'm just saying that, when you're looking for something, you're much more likely to find it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, in the natural scheme of things, cancers appear and disappear as a part of our natural evolution.
Right.
It's estimated that the average person, develops, 7 cancers or more during their lifetime. And I think that's an underestimation, because anytime we go through a severe stress, you can have a pattern that is established in the body that could look like a cancer if you were to look,
Mm-hmm.
at the right, or some people would say at the wrong moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the case of other cancers, you actually will have the cancer develop during the stress phase. So for instance, in the case of uh, glandular uh, cancer in the breast, or lobular carcinoma
Mm-hmm.
um, in the breast, the cancer actually develops during the stress phase, and then during the healing phase, you get ulceration or destruction of those cells and a breakdown of those cells. So again, begs brings up a lot of questions about the treatment of cancer and how cancer should be treated. And again, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do everything that we normally do, like surgery, chemo, radiation. But I am, suggesting to people out there that they also understand that there's an emotional connection, that there's an emotional trigger, conflicts underlying the illness, and by becoming more aware of what is, playing out in their lives, it's a lot easier
Yeah.
to do some healing at the deeper levels. So
Mm-hmm.
in my book Heal Thyself, I talk about the 5 levels of healing.
Mm-hmm.
And level 1 is the physical body, and most of the medical establishment is focused exclusively on that level.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Right.
dealing with physical maladies, and whether it's cellular, structural modalities, nutrition, exercise, getting rid of toxins. That's all level 1 stuff, and that's important. That's very, very important. But that doesn't hold. That doesn't give you a lot of traction because you have to keep doing it every day. Whereas when you do levels, work on the higher levels, the emotional level, for example, the emotional body, which is level 3, it gives you, exponential traction on the lower levels. Level 4, um, you know, is even more powerful. We're talking about the level of quantum physics, uh, where, for instance, uh, not just working yourself, but working on some of the generational wounds that you came into this world with, the stuff that you carry from your ancestors, can be exponentially even more powerful in helping you to heal. And then level 5, which is this the spirit body. When we work on spirit, and we work on strengthening the relationship with our Creator and all that. That's the realm of miracles and magic. And we know that miracles do happen. There's lots and lots of people, probably everyone out there has experienced, a miracle or 2 or 10 in
Mm-hmm.
their lives. I mean, in fact, it's a miracle every time we heal.
Right.
You cut yourself, and 14 days later, you can't hardly see that anything happened. That's a miracle. So
So,
just the same way as the body heals from anything, including
right.
cancer.
So the idea then is to bring more of an awareness into what's happening with our lives, right? So to understand if we're going through, like, for example, someone might be going through a bitter divorce, or they might be going through, a court legal case to try to save their business, like Kenneth Lay was. For us, the lesson, one of the lessons, is to understand the amount of stress and where it's coming from and what it might be doing to our biology, because animals can't really take that understanding, right? They can't understand that this is what's happening inside their body. They just sort of go through it. But the difference, it seems to me, like what you're saying, is that in the natural world, animals will go through a stressful state for maybe like a certain amount of time, like maybe a couple hours at the most. But humans, we subject ourselves to these stressful lifestyles that last for sometimes years. And that's the real issue. So recognizing what's going on and being kind and gentle to your body and reducing stress and trying to ease into whatever stressful situation you're in, that's part of the healing, right? Is not letting that happen and recognizing what's happening, right? That's part of what's going on.
Yeah, that's well put. And by the way, animals, especially domestic animals, take on human conflicts. So if you own an animal, and you don't resolve your issues, it's a good chance your animal is going to take that on your behalf. That's why we
Oh.
see animals develop all these, human diseases.
Mm-hmm.
Animals with hypertension, anxiety disorder, and cancers all over the place, and hypothyroidism and diabetes, you name it.
It's crazy, right? It's like,
and and when the owner resolves their problem, the animal is set free. The animal doesn't have to carry that. So again, there's so many examples.
I remember.
Of
I remember Doc. Sorry, Richard Massey was on our show when he was talking about that verse in the Bible that talks about honor your father and mother. And he was saying, he was kind of talking about that verse, and he was saying it's not a command. It's like a, what did he say? I forget the way he worded it, but it was almost like it's describing what's gonna happen whether you want to or not. And the way he talked about the word honor was interesting. He said, it's not like we honor them, we choose to honor them. It's that our biology, for some reason, chooses to, trying to think of the right word here, chooses to take on the issues and the challenges that our parents, the burdens that they were dealt with. And it's like if you were walking down the street with your mom and both of you had, a big bucket to carry, as a son, you're going to carry the bucket. You're going to take your mom's burden from her so that you could absorb that. And he was saying when we honor our father and mother, he was saying that, it's not a command, but it's a documentary of what's happening. So we take on the burden of our mother and father without even knowing it. We take their burden away from them, and then we sort of download it into our nervous system. And we will do that whether we want to or not, whether we like them or not, or whether we want to do that or not. It's just the process of life. And that's kind of like what you're just saying with the animals, how they take the burden of your immune system and your current illness and translate that to their immune system or to their biology in some way.
Yeah, I mean it's epigenetics basically,
Mm-hmm.
so the unresolved conflicts of your ancestors becomes your conflict, or conflicts, and that's why we often see people following the same patterns as their ancestors, their parents and their grandparents, great grandparents, whether it be habits or disease patterns. We think, oh, that's genetic, but maybe it's not genetic, maybe it's epigenetic downloads, from because of the unresolved conflicts from above. For instance, even when a woman is pregnant, we say, the unresolved conflicts of the parents, psychological conflicts of the parents, becomes the biological conflict of the child. So when a child is born with an illness or so-called congenital disease process, people think, oh well, that's just bad luck, or that's just genetics, gone awry.
Uh-huh.
But then the same thing, we can track back backwards and track down, the stresses, conflicts that took place in the womb and at conception, and the 9 months before pregnancy. Even there's a window, of about 18 months before birth, and then the first year of life, during which the fetus and the baby doesn't have boundaries as much. They don't experience themselves as separate human beings until about after the first year of life, and then they start developing that identity of self,
Wow.
separate being. So that's just a part of the mystery, and also the magic. Because again, we say in recall healing, the keys to healing is you name it, you claim it, and you dump it. And the dumping process is one of two things: either a reframe or a repair. A
Uh-huh.
reframe is the understanding that transcends, um, you know, uh, the stress itself. So I call it, healing through revelation. A revelation is an insight that's so powerful that it changes everything
Mm-hmm.
in your life. It changes the way you look at yourself, the way you look at others. A repair is when you do something in particular, like if you're in a bad marriage and you're fixing to go through a divorce, and you go to counseling, and you save your marriage, or um, you go to psychological counseling for unresolved loss,
Mm-hmm.
that you haven't been able to overcome. Dr. Harmer, for example, when he went through the losses that he went through, the loss of his son, he had friends and other members of the clergy help him through that loss, help him deal with and cope with that loss. So that would be an example of a repair.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Fascinating. So you want to recognize what's going on in your life and understand what's happening. And I'm wondering, with the people that you've seen and worked with, like, I'm wondering what kind of cases you've had and seen really surprising successes with, or people that have made huge turnarounds. Because you said before the show that you're working with people individually. You're not running your medical practice anymore, and you're working, which, by the way, I think is so fascinating that someone who went through the medical training has come all the way this far. Because it's one thing to swap out, aspirin for, you know, um, white willow bark or something like that. But it's another thing to go from aspirin to white willow bark to recall healing. It's pretty fascinating to see your journey.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's part of my journey, So I'm my best case study, in pathology, and all kinds of things. I wrote a second book called "Bringing Sexy Back." So look at me, that's.
That's right.
But the subtitle is "Transform the Body You Have into the Body You Want." So it's about the conflicts that underlie obesity and eating disorders and so forth. I went from a very scrawny little kid, that was always teased because my head was too big for my body. I almost died of dysentery when I was 9 months old, and never seemed to be able to keep weight on. So I was almost anorexic growing up, and then all of a sudden, when I reached adulthood and was approaching my first marriage, and getting into the medical profession, when just before I got into a position of high responsibility as a physician, then all of a sudden my weight started going up. So it's like there's a connection between those two things. So in bringing sexy back, I also relay my own story behind every pound that I've ever gained. And also what I've done to lose that, to turn that around. So it's still a work in progress. Still a little bit of a roller coaster. But that was part of my, leaving medicine 2 years ago, was literally to save my own life. I developed a heart issue, something called a diastolic dysfunction. In other words,
Uh-huh.
my heart wasn't relaxing properly in between beats.
Okay.
And I literally had a choice, to either take a step back, focus on my own healing, or, perish.
Uh-huh.
So if you look at my family history, talk about downloads, you know, not very pretty, because my father died at 56 and 4.5 months of a massive heart attack. My sister died of a massive heart attack at
Wow.
56 and 7 months. And so,
Whoa.
when I reached just before I turned 56, with my understanding of recall healing, I knew I needed to change course drastically, because I was going in the same direction. I was taking on, living some of the same conflicts that they had lived,
Wow.
just different details, and
Now, was that two
so
years
now
ago, Doc? Was that
that
about
was
2 years ago?
that was 2 years ago, and now I'm
Oh man.
57 and going strong, and healthier than I've been in decades, maybe. So, and
Wow.
enjoying life, and working on my own terms, and when I want,
Mm-hmm.
and even studying other things.
Mm-hmm.
So not only do I still do recall healing and uh, life coaching, but I do some trading, um, on the side, and so medicine. I had to make the hardest decision of my life, to walk away from the profession that I'd been preparing for and studying in from the age of 17. I was 17 when I went into medical school in South Africa. Works a little bit different there,
Mm-hmm.
and and I was 55 when I called it quits, when I said, okay, and I had enough wisdom around me, others around me that loved me and cared for me, that said, the same thing. You need to stop. You need to take some time to work on yourself. You need to
Wow.
um, you need to change your priorities dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
And totally. Even the way I looked at myself. I realized that a lot of the work that I was doing was not always because I just wanted to make a difference. It was also some hidden programs that I was running. Uh, that I also had to come to terms with, and
Mm-hmm.
so so the result is a renewed lease on life. Got remarried a few 3 months ago.
Wow.
My wife
Congratulations.
to my wife Nancy, and
Yeah.
and so third time lucky. I've been through
Yeah.
that one twice before too,
Yeah.
and
That's amazing.
but
Yeah,
it's
no, it's so great. I've heard it described as like the feedlot, and animals that live in the feedlot are confined and constrained. They're eating feedlot food, and thinking feedlot thoughts, and they're with other cows who are in the feedlot, walking on the slop and the gutter. And the problem is that is the disease, living in the feedlot. That's the disease. And, never making it out to what they say, the green pastures of Psalm 23, where you have freedom and less stress. And that's the disease, is living in the feedlot, thinking feedlot thoughts, taking feedlot food. And that's the disease that we're all in, and it seems like it's really taking its toll on us as a culture.
Yeah, I think we're in dire straits, in so many ways, and yet I'm seeing people all over making different decisions and changing the course of their lives and studying, self-healing.
Mm-hmm.
That was the inspiration behind writing my first book, Heal Thyself, Transform Your Life, Transform Your Health, by the way, which is, that title was uh, chosen very specifically because I believe that in order to heal physically, you have to heal at other levels first and foremost, and become aware, and transform your life. So I think, but we have disease epidemics like we've never seen before. Cancer epidemics. It's estimated that 1 in 2 people will die of cancer in
Mm-hmm.
our society. We see toxicity like never before. And so there is a toxin load that corresponds with the emotional stress, and there's also a lack of awareness in a lot of our population. But again, fortunately, I think more and more people are becoming more self-aware and understanding that eating food contaminated with Roundup and with pesticides and that kind of stuff, and eating GMO foods, that were engineered, with toxins in them, and making these foods much more allergenic than they've ever been before. And drinking clean water, filtering out what we can, as you suggested, in the blue filter, the blue blocking
Mm-hmm.
of light that we're all exposed to at night, and especially is critical, and getting exposed to sunlight in the morning. And so in my book Heal Thyself, I have lay out 18 steps to manifest your miracle, and
Mm-hmm.
those are among those, getting so I think I love the work that you're doing too, you and your wife, and getting the word out,
Mm-hmm.
to people out there, and giving them a deeper understanding,
Mm-hmm.
and also just the fact that you've interviewed a lot of us in the recall healing community. I'm really excited about that, because
Thank you.
so few of the radio guys and the internet guys are really focusing much at all on that.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate because, there, as there's two genomes. There's the nuclear genome, there's the DNA, and then there's the biophysics side of the genome, the mitochondria. And I think that we're all focused in the natural health community on the DNA, on the genes and genetic expression and food and exercise and fitness and calories and all these types of things. I think it goes a level further than that. I think on the physical level, at least, it goes up to the mitochondrial health, the electrical charge, the voltage of the body. That's sort of still, in my opinion, dancing between the physical and the spiritual. It's kind of right in between there. But I think there's some invisible process that controls mitochondria, because they say that mitochondria controls genetic expression, but I think there's something above the mitochondria that controls it. And I don't see a lot of people talking about these deeper spiritual, emotional issues and how they relate. Because, if you lower artificially cholesterol, your number, whatever disease process is happening because your body's stressed and out of balance, you may be able to artificially lower some arbitrary number and have a label on that and say that the number is less. But whatever disease process is happening is still happening in the background, while someone is just sort of, thinks that they're healthier because they lowered some number. And whatever the trigger is for that, I think is this deeper spiritual, emotional stuff that you're talking about with recall healing. I think it goes so much deeper than most people realize.
Well, and so that example I address in Heal Thyself. The case of certain medications like statin drugs, for example. It's the most commonly prescribed group of drugs in our society, and yet massive fortunes are being made off of them.
Uh-huh.
But yet, we're doing very, very little in terms of impacting heart disease rates. I mean, the slight decrease in the incidence of fatal heart attacks, is completely negated by the increase in other disease um, processes, other conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So, even when they did the original studies, it showed that the death rates didn't really change, but the death rates from heart disease went down slightly. So that's what they tout. But these days they don't even report in the studies that they do the overall death rates. So death rates from accidents, from suicide, from uh, Alzheimer's, dementia,
Mm-hmm.
loss of hormones, and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
That's also contributed to by those very medications, those very drugs, even the increased incidence of congestive heart failure. You know, there's been a massive increase in the incidence of congestive heart failure in our, over the last 40 years or so,
Mm-hmm.
and it's congruent with the number of statin drug prescriptions. If you look at the number of statin drug prescriptions and the incidence of congestive heart failure, it mirrors each other. It's just about 5 years delayed. So it
Uh-huh.
takes about 5 years to knock the heart down, but sometimes faster. And you know, and so of course that statin drugs impact on coenzyme Q10
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
levels in the body. And that goes to mitochondrial health and all that, and
Mm-hmm.
that impacts every cell in the body when you don't have enough coenzyme Q10. And you know, these drug companies have done nothing to educate people on at least replenishing their CoQ10
I know.
when they take those drugs. So but smart people, you see even on TV ads all over the place for CoQ10, and in taking that when you're taking statin drugs now. So
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah, people are slowly waking up to all of this stuff, and I think it's super important. I wanted to ask you. I thought it was really interesting what you were saying about when you were 57 or 56, and you had that critical time in your life where you had to figure out what was going on. That kind of gets into like timeline therapy and this idea that you can cut the amount of years that you've been living in half and then look at what was going on in your life. So if you're 20, then you look at what was happening when you're 10, and then 5, and then 2.5. And just the fact that you were going through that at the same time that your sister in her life passed away from a heart attack, and then your father as well at 56 years old. I mean, you have to think that something is deeper is happening there with at least the time in life when these things happen, right?
yeah, it's like I inherited their timelines.
Uh-huh.
So to one degree or another, we take on a lot of patterns from our ancestors, and including oftentimes their timelines. And
Mm-hmm.
I also, in recall healing, we talk about the conflict of the diagnosis. So a lot of people have an awareness, or a concern that they might develop a disease, and then they end up developing the disease, and they think, oh well, that was predestined, that was going to happen regardless because it was genetic. But maybe it's not genetic, maybe it's epigenetic, maybe it's a program that's running until we
Interesting.
become aware of the program, and then you can clear that. So if you look at those patterns in my family, for example, um, they're very, very well defined, and yet I didn't think I inherited those programs and those patterns. But lo and behold, when I started having some heart issues at 55, I brought everything to immediate halt in my life, and took some action, in a different
Mm-hmm.
direction. I
So
still.
is the problem then that we just don't recognize, like we don't look at the burdens of our previous members of our generations, our parents, and look at their life, and we don't understand how the stress of maybe a really stressful corporate job is affecting our health. is the problem that we just don't see these things for what they are. And in the case of the dog being in the cage, that itself was the actual thing that was causing disease in that dog. And so is the problem that we just don't recognize what's really going on? Because it looks like for you, if you hadn't put all this together, you could have kept pushing forward in your career, and maybe you too would have had the same fate. But because you had that realization, then you decided, okay, something has to be changed here. And it's not just as easy as taking more magnesium and CoQ10 and some nattokinase for my heart. It's, I got to make a whole entire lifestyle change. So that awareness is super important, it seems to me.
Right. Somebody once said that the quality of your life is directly correlated to the quality of the questions that you ask. So in fact, Tony Robbins is the one that said that.
Okay.
So we can credit him for that. But that's literally true with recall healing. So if you want to change the course of your life compared to those of your ancestors, then start asking different questions. And one of the questions is to ask is, what is it that I carry within me that is related to the unresolved conflicts of my ancestors? So that's the nature of biology. That's the beauty and the perfection of creation, is that the baby that comes into the world, is a catch basket for the unresolved conflicts of the parents. As I said earlier, the unresolved psychological conflicts of the parents become the biological conflicts of the child, and it's biological necessity for that to happen, so that it gives the parents a little bit of a respite to continue focusing on survival and to do what is necessary to continue their journey in this world, so that they can take care of that baby and raise that baby. So it doesn't matter whether it's human beings or other animals, we all follow the same patterns. And it goes beyond just mother and father. It goes to the rest of our ancestry as well. So in fact, in recall healing, we always look up, at least 3 generations, above us. So we look at our parents, we look at our grandparents, great grandparents, and everyone, on that level. So I talk in my book about birth order resonance. So your birth order even is important in this, in understanding who you resonate with above you. So if you're firstborn, you're more likely to carry the conflicts and disease patterns of, the other firstborns in your family. But it's important to know that number, because sometimes people don't know what they don't know. Was there abortion? Was there, a loss of a child? Miscarriage, so forth. So a lot of people don't ever tell others about, some of the traumas that of loss that include understanding their number.
So what happens, Doc, in situations where there's an unresolved conflict? Excuse me. Like, let's say there's an unresolved conflict of some, like, let's say a fear of flying or fear of heights or something, or some unresolved conflict that a person has that goes back multiple generations. Does the conflict go to the next generation, and then if that human being is able to grow up and sort of conquer that conflict, then that sort of gets neutralized, and then, or does it continue on if every generation fails to overcome that lesson that they're supposed to learn? Does it just continue, do you think?
Well, I think time itself, and there's the continuation of a family lineage, does wash out certain conflicts and challenges. So that awareness, one way or another, starts building through the experiences of one line of ancestry after another. But you can speed up that process tremendously by becoming aware, and that is where you also get into quantum physics. So the work that you do to become more aware affects not just you, but affects your kids, affects your siblings, affects your parents. And some people think it even goes beyond the grave. That you have the privilege and the opportunity to heal things on behalf of your ancestors that go all the way back to previous generations. So there's a lot of suffering that goes on, for us to be in this world, and even today we see, tremendous suffering on this planet, and so that awareness that we build, helps not just our family but also humanity as a whole. So as 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 a species, we are evolving, and raising our individual level of consciousness has an impact on humanity as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read a book a while back by Carolyn Mace, or Miss, I don't know how you say her name, Myss, and she wrote a book called Sacred Contracts. You probably read that one, and
Yep.
it was really interesting because for those that haven't read it, it's interesting because she talks about how we came into this world with these specific contracts that we took on in order to grow and to learn, and lessons to learn and things like that. But before we are born, we drink from the river of forgetfulness, is the way she described it. So that's why we can't remember like past lives, if that's a thing you believe in or whatever. We can't remember that stuff because it's purposefully forgotten, so that we can think that everything that we're experiencing is unique. And I thought it was just interesting too, because it seems like in my mind, if you're able to somehow get in touch with what's going on within you and what your purpose is, that you can preempt illnesses. So it shouldn't take, like, let's say you're going through a nasty divorce and it takes you 2 years to get through it. It shouldn't take a year of just not sleeping and stress and worrying about how you're going to lose everything to wake up and realize I need to change some things. I wonder if it's possible to preempt specific situations and conditions in your life, so that you can work on those things on an energetic, spiritual, emotional level, so that they never happen, so you don't have to go through the idea of being beat on the head or coming down with a diagnosis, or chopping an arm off, or any of these sort of physical ailments that we have. Is it possible through the work of spiritual practice to preempt these things so that they never happen, and then you can still get the growth process of all that, but they don't have to physically happen to you? I wonder if that's something that's possible.
I think it is, and I think that happens. And for a lot of us, it happens without us even knowing about it. Um, because it's just a part of life and part of evolution.
Mm-hmm.
For others, it happens more consciously, because a lot of people out there, including those listening to the show, are interested in self-improvement, are interested in personal evolution, and are asking the right questions to maybe be able to avoid some of that suffering. But as many have said, it's suffering is inevitable as human beings. Because we all go through loss, we all go through aging, and we all go through shifts in our lives, and things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Bad things happen to good people, as they say,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just part and parcel of life. But the more awareness we bring to the table, I think the less horrible, traumatic growth do we have to go through.
Mm-hmm.
As we go through on this journey of life. So and yet there's lots that we still are learning, and learning to understand. I always think of the story of Dr. Claude Sabat, who was one of the fathers of recall healing, or he called it total biology.
Uh-huh.
When he created his science, put it together. But he said one time to a student of his, that he had finally figured out all these conflicts, and finally overcome all of them. And 48 hours later, he had a massive stroke and almost died. And so famous last words.
Yeah.
Maybe of course, we know that stroke is a healing phase. So maybe he did overcome everything, and then he had a massive healing crisis, that led to the stroke. So
That's so funny. Yeah, it's
I
interesting.
mean,
It's interesting looking at the heart attack model of all of this because, like, if you think about it in terms of like shutting down lanes of a freeway, like shutting down your heart in order to repair. So when you're going through the stress, you're digesting literally your arteries to allow more oxygen blood flow so that you can fight and regain your territory. And then when you shut all the lanes down to repair the damage that you did literally digesting the insides of your arteries, that's when you bring out the worker crews. You do it at 2 in the morning when not a lot of people are going by. There's not a lot of traffic. And that repair phase is supposed to be the healing phase. So that's when you build the cholesterol, you heal the internal wounds. But the problem is that once we regain our territory, like in the case of the dog, you go out, you party, you continue this living this stressful lifestyle, not realizing that you can't put that much traffic through a freeway that's got three out of four lanes shut down. You can't continue to have the same output. And then as a result of that, not having that awareness, living the same lifestyle, we have a heart attack because the heart just can't deal with that kind of output. And then we call the heart attack the disease. It's so crazy how backwards the whole thing is if all this is true. It's nuts.
yeah, I mean, and even the uh, physiological parameters that we use to monitor heart disease, like cholesterol. If you think about it, cholesterol naturally goes up during the healing phase because it's a
Okay.
repair kit. It's to have the way the body repairs damage to those, the lining of the blood vessels and stress on any organ system. In fact, high cholesterol is actually correlated with better outcomes. For instance, we know that low cholesterol is correlated with higher incidence of cancer, higher incidence of suicide and depression, and all kinds of other maladies. Whereas higher cholesterol is oftentimes a sign of health, and yet it correlates with when you're going to see an increase in the risk of a heart attack during that healing phase. But if you understood it in context, then you would understand that cholesterol is not the enemy. So it is if understanding the conflict program and helping somebody to deal with that and to help them through their healing without a crisis. And that's where conventional medicine comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Is helping somebody to avoid a catastrophe during that healing process, and having medical services available and so forth. But when you start treating disease as if it's a chronic illness with medications, there's always a price to pay because the drugs themselves don't do anything to relieve the conflict except for the conflict of the diagnosis. Now, there is something to be said for somebody's beliefs. If somebody believes that the anti-cholesterol drug is good for them, or the antihypertensive, and
Right.
then that's going to help them. It's going to make a difference because there's there's a very powerful belief that's backed and that they're sending through the system every time they take that drug, every time they take that supplement, every time they eat healthy. If you're doing stuff that you believe is good for you, that has an impact, and and it may or may not be a placebo effect.
Uh-huh.
But so much of medicine is really a placebo effect. Regardless of who the healer is, the physician. You're tapping into the belief of the person that you're working with. But the deeper the understanding that person has on why they're ill, and the more they're focused on a balance and inner healing and healing broken emotions, and increasing the level of emotional health, so that they're
Mm-hmm.
experiencing more positive emotions and fewer negative emotions. I don't know if you've ever read David Hawkins' books. One was his first book was called Power versus Force,
Uh-huh.
and it has basically it lays out emotions in terms of their level of power. So from the weakest to the most powerful, and that's one of the books that inspired Heal Thyself, my book Heal Thyself, and there's entire chapters in my book that were inspired by him, in terms of just some of the overall perspectives on emotional healing. So there's a diagram in Power versus Force that I also use, that I give to every one of my clients, so that they can understand, where negative emotions lie. As like, for instance, the weakest of human emotions is shame. So right. So if somebody experiences shame a lot, they're going to be very, very likely to die and very weak and very, very predisposed to self-destruction. So if you want to find out where somebody that's a suicide bomber resides on the scale, that's going to be where they're going to be most likely, because they don't even care about their own life at that level. On the other hand, if somebody is at the level, operating at the level of love, and unconditional love or joy or inner peace, then they're much more likely to be healthy. They're much more likely to inspire healthful behaviors in others. So that's a great book to read if for those that want to understand consciousness a little bit more. And Dr. Hawkins has written many other books. He died about 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And unfortunately, I never got to meet him. I was actually organizing a trip out to Sedona to go and meet him when I heard he had passed away. So.
Oh man, that would have been great. Yeah, in terms of placebo, there's a great book I read a while back called Mind Over Medicine by Lisa Rankin. She's a former medical doctor, and she goes into this whole, for multiple pages, all about the placebo and what that does, to people. And it's really interesting, this idea of believing someone that is diagnosing you, and what that does to the human psychology, and what that does to our ability to really have the strength within ourselves to know that that may not be an accurate diagnosis, or I can overcome this diagnosis. Just believing, as soon as you believe, then it's like you've got a secondary virus or secondary cancer or secondary illness that sort of rides on top of that initial thing going on with you. And yeah, it's a powerful thing, this whole diagnosis thing and belief, isn't it?
Well, another great book is Joe Dispenza's book, "You Are the Placebo." So that's a great description of understanding how we become the solution or we become the problem. Either way, and our beliefs and what we can do about it. He's a big advocate of meditation, and he's connected to his books. Each one of his books, he's got a set of meditations that are available that you can do, for instance, first thing in the morning. And, that's made a big difference for me, just to study his work. And, maybe it was life-saving because, I've had, ironically, even though, I'm still here on the planet, at 57, I had a lot of tragedies over the last year or so. My son passed away in February,
wow.
Car accident. He was a chiropractor here in Tyler. He was also an extraordinary healer. His name was Sean DeWet, and so left behind four small kids and a spouse. And my mother passed away last September. Which is interesting because she passed away right on my timeline when my sister died. My sister was 56 and 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
So my mother passed away when I reached the age of 56 and 7 months.
Wow.
So sometimes I wonder, did my mother sacrifice herself, on my behalf? That's one way to look at it, or just another resonance, timeline resonance that took place. And I had a 19-year-old cat, almost 20 years old, in my cat's suit. There's pictures of suit on Facebook, on my Facebook page. But she passed away the day after I turned 57. So it's like, okay, well. And she tried to die when I was 56 and 4.5 months old. She got, life-threatening illness, and I didn't think she was going to make it. And one thing that I did to suit is I whispered in her ear, or I had a conversation with her. Found kind of dumb having a conversation when I said, "Shoot, you don't have to carry this for me. I'm going to be fine."
Right.
Yes, I understand. And 24 hours later, she was better. She was back to life and doing great, and continued on for another few months, and until, as I said, the day that turned 57. Actually, she didn't die on that day, but she became extremely ill on that day, on my birthday, and 3 days later, she passed
Wow.
away. So
That's nuts. Wow. So that's crazy. So do you think, Doc, finally just wrapping up here, I want to be aware of your time. I know you have a busy schedule, but do you think finally this idea of sort of standing over your children's sleep and, where they're sleeping and talking to them and telling them that they don't have to carry our burdens and allowing them to be free of that? And do you think that's a good idea when it comes to recall healing? Because if it is true that we all carry the burdens of previous generations, then psychologically, subconsciously, we carry that and don't know it. And if our parents can release us of that, and sort of embed that into our subconscious mind while we're sleeping and learning to let that go, that seems like it would be a worthy thing to do, right?
yeah, I think it makes sense that understanding that your kids carry those conflicts, their own and ours,
Uh-huh.
and watching them health wise. If your kid gets sick, try to ask more empowering questions, not just what the heck do I do here? What drug do I put my kid on? But what is that child taking on? What is the conflict behind the illness? If the child has an ear infection, you know, understand that there's a conflict of separation in link with what it is that I need to hear, or what it is that I don't want to hear.
Uh-huh.
That's behind, that ear infection. So if the child has, a cold, think about a conflict of separation in link with, what stinks in my territory. What
Mm-hmm.
is the stress that's happened at home that child went through, instead of who was he exposed to. We think it's viruses that make us sick, or bacteria,
Right.
but even though those organisms play a role, they're really part of the cleanup crew. Again, I
Uh-huh.
explain this in Heal Thyself, um, in detail. But so having that understanding, asking empowering questions, and then having compassion and empathy, and saying, is what is this child carrying that is maybe not even theirs? Is it stress in the household? Is it conflict between mom and dad? Is it overwhelm at school? Is it kids tend to get all these diseases, when they go back to school.
Mm-hmm.
When it's midsummer, they're not supposed to get sick from colds and bronchitis and flu when they go back to school, but yet they get sick. Why? Because they're under stress again. They're back at school. They're having to perform. They're
Mm-hmm.
getting homework. There's you know uh, you know they're off their more relaxed schedule, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's those are empowering questions to ask, and having a conversation with your kid. If you do gain understanding, if you have some insights into what they might be carrying that's making them sick, then um, can make a tremendous difference, and does make a tremendous difference. So
Okay. Yeah, that's great. That's great. So Doc, I know your website is it's PeterDeWet.com, I believe, right? And I've showed it on the screen a few times. We'll put show links to this. For those that are watching live, it is, let me just make sure I get the correct show number, because this is going to come out as a podcast. Whenever it does, it's going to be episode 606. So if you go to extremehealthradio.com/606, we'll have the show notes there for you. For this particular show, and you can check out the sponsors and the different books we talked about. I'll put all those in there. But Doc, would a good primer, do you think, be for people your book, and then if they want to work further with you, do you do remote sessions with clients and things like that?
yes, I do.
Okay.
So people can contact me through either my email address. Actually, my phone number is probably the easiest, and my my business phone number is 903-539-9069, 903-539-9069. 9069.
Okay.
And they can also go to my website, Dr. DeWet, DRDEWET, .com, drdewet.com. And my books are on there. And also, we have a series of DVDs that me and Dr. Renaud recorded together of workshops that we taught together
Oh, no way.
on all kinds of different subjects. And those videos are DVDs are available. For people that want to go into specific areas or disease processes, or just want to understand the entire body, there's a level 1, level 2, level 3 under the DVDs section, and that takes you through a journey through the entire body.
Oh,
And
wow.
then we have one on obesity and eating disorders and illnesses and behaviors of children. If you want to understand what we're talking about as far as kids and chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis,
Oh,
women's health
wow.
challenges, breast disease, Lyme disease, men's health challenges. So for those conditions that are unique to women and
Uh,
unique to men, so it's very, very hard for us to teach workshops on each of these. And Dr. Renaud, unfortunately, is so busy teaching all over the world that he doesn't have much time to teach in the U.S. So Dr. Renaud also has a book titled Recall Healing Pyramid of Health that you can get online. I think you can also you might be able to get it on Amazon. I don't know if it's available there now, but it's basically an encyclopedia of diseases and conditions and behaviors, and the programs and stories linked to each of there it is. Yep,
mm-hmm.
that's a resource, an invaluable resource that I would recommend that everybody have in the house, so that they can literally just go and get an idea of what the condition is all about that they're carrying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's a good book. I have that one as well because it kind of breaks everything down into specific conditions, and people can look and see what's really going on with all of that. And I think it's a good reference book, isn't it?
Yeah, that's I always have three of three or four copies
Uh huh.
around my house, and I used to sell Dr. Renaud's book as well, but you can get it through I think Amazon or directly through Dr. Renaud now
Mm-hmm.
at recallhealing.com or recallhealing.ca, I believe, two places that you can also get it. But it just and I think he's working on a new volume now too.
Oh,
So he
cool.
is always adding more and more stuff, more and more information to his manual. But the one that you showed is the latest one available
Yeah.
right now to anybody out there.
That's awesome. So these lectures that you have on your website, are they talks that you gave with Dr. Renaud, and then it was recorded, or is it direct to camera kind of coaching that you guys did together, or what's the format of that?
That basically workshops that we taught. So as we taught workshops on these different subjects, they were recorded
Okay.
for us, and then that was cut to DVD format and available to people out there, either through DVD discs or or as a um, on a flash drive,
Mm-hmm.
so we can so people have the resources available, even though they may not. And I know Michelle Schrader
Uh-huh.
is teaching recall healing workshops. Um, she's got 2 or 3 on the schedule. So, people look her up. They can find out where she's teaching recall healing seminars and attend those. So that's an extraordinary opportunity. I know she's doing one called the Toolbox um, in the near future. That where she actually uh, just works with people that want to work on their issues and helps them, whatever the disease process, and teaches them how to work with each other too. So
Yeah, she's great. She's great. We should probably have her back on the show again. She was a lot of fun. We had her on in person. That was fun. She's great.
Yeah, I would highly recommend that. I always like to listen to her too.
Yeah,
So,
she's great. All right, Doc. Well, I want to be cognizant of your time. Thanks so much for being on. It's been way too long. It's been a few years, and we're gonna have to revisit this again sometime, I hope.
absolutely, I'm available. So just let me know,
Okay.
and what you want to chat about, and I appreciate the opportunity. It's an
Yeah.
honor to be on your show again.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And do you have any books coming out in the future? Any new projects? Anything you want to tell people about?
Well, I've not been working on any new books lately, but I might be getting closer to the point where I might get back to writing.
Ah.
Um, the last 2 years, as I mentioned, just been taking it a little slower. Not, I used to just work, like a maniac, and I was a
Yeah.
little bit of a workaholic,
Yeah.
and so I've learned, that's not the way to, to heal and stay alive. So,
Yeah.
but I'll let you know uh, when I do get something completed, then we can chat about it. So.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. A lot of fun. All right, Doc. Well, thank you again so much for your insights today, and we're going to sort of chat about it in the post show. And I appreciate you and your work and everything you're doing. And I'll be in contact again soon, and we'll do it again.
Okay, sounds great. And have a wonderful day to everybody out there listening
Uh,
to. Thanks.
awesome. Thanks,
Bye.
Doc. Bye bye. All righty, Dr. Pieter DeWet. What do you guys think about recall healing? This is one of the things that I try to imbue or imbibe into people, is that healing is much more than just the physical aspect of what we're doing. A lot of people in the natural health world, this is what happens a lot, is they focus on food. And it's not just about food, my friends. It's about so much more. On another level, it goes up and it goes above food. It goes into light frequency, light, water, magnetism. And then above that, there's spiritual, deeper issues going on here that people just don't realize. It's like, I'm so glad he said that about, some of the things that we're featuring on our show, is that, these are things that other podcasts are not touching on. They're not touching on mitochondrial health. They're not touching on light. They're not touching on spirituality, on emotions and stress, and all of these things that I think constitute real health. And it's really kind of a bummer, because when you are focusing on food, it's like you can sell people supplements. And I'm a big fan of supplements, and there's supplements that we have in our store that are amazing, but it really comes down to the deeper issues in life, and that is light, water, magnetism, and spirituality and emotions, and how those things tie into our physical biology. Just like the mitochondria, in my opinion, is what controls genetic expression. The same thing is true. Some invisible process is what is controlling the mitochondria to do what it does. And so it's so, so important to figure out, like I was saying before on the show, that, just because you can lower some artificial numbers or some numbers artificially, these are arbitrary numbers that you can lower with your blood pressure or your cholesterol levels or these types of things. Just because you can lower them doesn't mean it's stopping the invisible process that's happening behind the scenes that we just don't know about. And this has been something that I'm working on all the time, is my emotional health, my stress levels. And right now, I recognize that it's a very stressful time for Kate and I. We just have 2-month-old twin boys. And so life is very, very different for us. And so we're working on that. We're working on trying to have the realization that this is a stressful time, and to ease into it and give ourselves grace, and allow ourselves to move through this stressful time with grace. But if we keep pushing at the same rate, we're just going to burn ourselves out. We're going to cause ourselves some sort of underlying stressful condition that's going to result in a diagnosis or in some kind of pathology, or something is wrong with us. And that's why it's so important to tell people that it's not about the food that you eat. It's about the environment you live in. It's about your emotional state. It's your internal environment, external environment. All these things are the driving triggers, in my opinion, of what constitutes health or lack thereof. It is things in your life that are causing you to be so stressed out. And that's the disease process, is living in the feedlot. Like I was saying before, it's like we're living in a feedlot. We never make it to the green pastures of Psalm 23, as it says in the Bible. We don't make it to there because we're living in a feedlot and we don't realize it. And when you don't realize something, it's like, if you don't have that awareness, you don't realize what's happening behind the scenes, and it becomes a really, really dangerous situation, because as soon as you regain your freedom, as soon as you get that divorce, or as soon as you win that court case and you get your company back, or as soon as you graduate from school, or as soon as you have some life-changing event happen, you've damaged yourself so much. Like, I think of children in school, and they're staying up all night long to study, and they're just wrecking their hormonal systems, their endocrine systems. They're just putting such a burden on their entire overall physiology through the stress of doing that. And then as soon as graduation day comes, something happens, some big event happens for their, in their life, and they don't realize that, like, that's when the body needs to heal. That's when you need to, do some meditation, focus on your health, and take some nattokinase, take some, things good for the heart, chill out. When you win is when you want to be most concerned and most careful. So what did you guys think about that? This is kind of like the post show, where we get to talk about the guest. We get to share ideas about the guest and all of that. Before I get your thoughts on what you think of Dr. Pieter DeWet, I wanted to tell you guys about it's cool Joovv light. If you guys are unfamiliar with light therapy, let me just bring it up on the screen here. I've really been enjoying using this Joovv red light therapy. You guys probably know how much I consider light to be one of the fundamental things that gives us health. We are beings of light. We are repositories for light. Basically, food is a substitute for light. Because each food, according to Adam Bergstrom, who wrote the book Chronobiotic Nutrition, Yes, No, Maybe, each food holds on to specific frequencies of light. And so when we're eating that food, we're eating those different frequencies of light. That's why you don't want to eat a banana in New York in the middle of winter if you can avoid it, because you're eating light and you're telling your body it's the tropics in the middle of summer. But in reality, it's the middle of winter in Canada and you're eating a banana. So when you're eating food, you're eating light, basically. And light is what we are beings of light. And our skin is our biggest organ, and it allows us, it's our solar panel, it allows us to uptake light. Each one of our cells has around 3,000 to 10,000 mitochondria per cell. Brain cells and heart cells have the most mitochondria in them because they're so important to everything that we do. So these mitochondria, like I was saying on the show, are controlled, or they are what control genetic expression. So the number one way to impact the mitochondria is through light. The mitochondria make water through electrical voltage using light and biophotons from the sun. But a lot of times we can't get the sun in our daily life. And so this is why I love the Joovv. The Joovv is, in my opinion, in my experience in using this thing, it's incredibly powerful. It's FDA tested. It's independently cleared. It lasts for 50,000 hours. Let me bring up a photo of me using it. You can probably see it. There I am standing in front of ours. And it's just a hilarious thing. It's so funny because it's so red. It's so red. The specific nanometers that you want to be, if you're going to get a red light machine, you want to make sure that it's 660, which is basically red light, and that's the frequencies carried on the red frequency of light, 660 nanometers, and then near infrared is all the way around the 850 mark. And so 660 to 850. The Joovv allows for both of those to be used, as well as a combo of both. And I use mine every day for about 10 minutes. And there's a picture of our door, our poltergeist bedroom with it. You can see on Instagram. But I use it mine every day for about 10 minutes. And it's incredible for ATP production, for energy. And what I like about it is it's the number one way to alter mitochondrial expression and mitochondrial health. If your mitochondria aren't producing ATP, you're in real trouble. You're in real trouble. Some other ways to impact mitochondrial health are vibration, sound, frequency, temperature. That's why cold baths and warm. That's why we love the sauna that's in our store as well, because all of these impact the mitochondria. And it allows us to uptake more water as well. And our mitochondria make water. So it's really important to have that electron chain transport, transferring electrons across the membrane of the mitochondria to be working optimally. And so that's why the Joovv, in my opinion, is one of the most incredible things. You can build your own, like a modular design, like you can see in this photo. Big fan of Joovv red light therapy. And there's different models now. They have ones that you can put on your desk as well. So if you're looking for like seasonal effectiveness disorder, you can have ones that work just for your face. Mine is like a 4-panel one. Eventually, I'm going to build my own and get a full body light spectrum thing like this, so I can get light into all areas of my body at one time. So if you guys are looking to optimize your mitochondria and your genetic expression and your overall health, improve collagen, improve skin health, the Joovv is the way to go. So make sure to check that out. And I also wanted to tell you, when it comes to light, one of the best ways to hold on to more light is using DHA. DHA, this is the Symbiotica. If you use the code EHR, you can get 15% off, thanks to Matt Blackburn and Chervine, who is his business partner. But we take this stuff. Kate has been on it, and you can check it out here. This is his old product when it was called MitoLife. But this is a way to help the body increase electrical voltage and carry that charge across the mitochondrial membrane through the use of DHA. Now it has astaxanthin in it too, which is pretty amazing. So thanks, guys, for checking out our store. And there's the Pyramid of Health. For checking out our store and supporting the products that we have in there. We use them, we love them, and we're big fans of them. So let me head on over to YouTube and see if you guys are chit-chatting away. And see if there's anybody there that is chatting here. I Mean Business says you would love to have a session with him. Yeah, he's great. He's really, really great. Let's see. Dealt with a great deal of stress at a former job. I've done a lot of healing, but still have some leftover remnants to heal. I'm hoping to replay this. Yeah. You know what? It's one of the things that is really important for all of us to recognize, like where we are in our life and the amount of stress that we're carrying, and what the things that we're doing in our life, how they affect our stress. Because ultimately, really, what it comes down to is we just want to feel good. When you can feel good, when you're happy, when you feel connected to your purpose, when you feel like you're impacting the lives of other people, when you feel a deep sense of belonging, and you have connections with other people, and you're happy, and you're joyful, and you're doing the work that you're supposed to be doing, and you have low stress, that's the default state that we should all be in. And when we're not, that's when health becomes compromised. And so I Mean Business says, I now play classical music when I'm really stressed, and I think it's so helpful. Yeah, whatever you can do to feel good. Sometimes what I do is there's a lot of different things that you can do. EFT, emotional freedom technique. You can do tapping. You can do meditation. You can, increase your endorphins by jumping on a rebounder or going in a cold body of water or exercising. But sometimes what I like to do is I'm typically always listening to something. I love to listen to health podcasts and personal development, spiritual growth podcasts, stuff like that. But sometimes when it gets really stressful, there's a really great podcast I listen to. You have to be a member of the website. It's Phil Hendry. And Kate, you know what I'm talking about. I just crack up. It's a comedy podcast, but it's hilarious because the guest plays these different voices and plays them as a caller. And people don't realize, the people listening don't realize that he's doing all the voices. And it is just so, so funny. It's philhendryshow.com. You can look it up on Google, and you can become a member and start listening to all the different stuff. It just makes me crack up. And sometimes I just need something that's going to make me laugh. Sometimes I'll listen to more music than others. The majority of time I like to learn stuff because I like to share information here on this show, and have insights into my own health and to experiment with different things. But sometimes I just need to let go of all that stuff and just listen to something that's going to make me laugh, right? Something to change how your body's processing information so that you can feel good and you can laugh and joke around and enjoy life and just, not worry too much. And, sometimes we just need to alter our physiology by the use of music, being around good people, listening to funny things or going to comedy shows or just losing yourself in a good movie. You want to really feel good. Here's a question on YouTube. Didn't know the rebounder increased endorphins. Yeah, it does. It does. And if you do it outside, what's amazing about that is that you can increase your dopamine levels too, by the use of being exposed to the sun. And so you're increasing endorphins by being on the rebounder, and you're increasing your dopamine levels by being outside, which in and of itself is addictive. That's why it's addictive to be out in the sun. And so that's why it's really important to do your rebounding outdoors if you can. Yeah, some good people in here in the chat room. Maria says, I had a set of twin girls that just turned 39. Oh my gosh, enjoy them while they're still young. Empty nest was emotional for me. Wow. 39. That's amazing. Twin girls, Maria. That's so cool. Are they good friends? I always wonder about twins. Are they good friends? Do they enjoy each other? A lot of times siblings aren't. When they grow up and get older, they kind of run their own lives and do their own things. But it's interesting. Yeah, so what did you guys think? Did you like Dr. DeWet? Did you like what he had to say? I really liked him a lot. I really want to explore further this idea of recall healing and how it applies to our health. All right, my friends, excuse me. Looking at some of the comments here on Dr. Bergman's channel. By the way, guys, for those that don't know, if you're watching on Dr. Bergman's channel, we are working together with Dr. Bergman. If you don't know who we are, you're wondering who the heck are these people? My name is Justin Stellman, and I'm the host of Extreme Health Radio, along with my wife, Kate. She's usually on, but today she's with our twins. And we have worked together with Dr. Bergman to create the Extreme Health Academy. So the Academy is a place I kind of shared a little bit before. We're working with Dr. Bergman. We're going to be bringing other guests in as well. We've done over 600 shows, and we have a lot of relationships with naturopathic healers and authors and medical doctors and naturopathic doctors. Dr. Bergman is just one of them. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be partnering with other doctors as well to create content for you. So just think of this as like a Netflix for your health. Things that you should have been taught in school, but were not. And so when we talk on Extreme Health Radio, we talk all about this kind of stuff, but how do you put it into practice? That's sort of the rub, right? Is like, how do we implement these things in a way that's easy, that's simple, that's fun, but incredibly powerful? And so that's what we're doing inside the Extreme Health Academy. So if you guys want to join, I would recommend joining because it's going to change your life. This information Dr. Bergman shares, and like I said, we're going to be working with other naturopathic doctors as well to create more and more and more content, actionable content for you. So if you're listening to this and you're a Dr. John Bergman fan, if you go to extremehealthacademy.com and type in the code Bergman, like his last name, Bergman14, that will give you a free 14-day trial. Or if you're an Extreme Health Radio fan, you can type in EHR14, and both of those will get you a free 14-day trial. So I just want to let you guys know that that's what we're doing inside the Academy. And every month, every week, we're doing live Q&A calls. There's a forum, a community in there with thousands and thousands of people all talking to each other and interacting. So it's really cool. It's a really cool place. All right, so yeah, that answers the question of why we're streaming on Dr. Bergman's channel. Love him so much, and he's just a great guy. Let me just show you guys a little bit about tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to be talking with Phil Wilson at 10:45 a.m. Pacific time. We're going to be talking about the benefits of sauna therapy. And let me just give you guys a little. What was the name of that bed that I came across. For those that don't know, I'm really into things like cold thermogenesis and light and frequency, water and magnetism and spirituality. And these are the ways that our mitochondria get altered, right? So I'm really into those things. And there was a bed that or a particular, Kate, if you're listening, do you have the name of the CT, not bed, but it's like a tub. I forget what it was called, but there's a certain tub that you can get that you can set it to like 45, 50 degrees and do your cold thermogenesis in there. So if you're listening, Kate, share the link with that if you can, or just the name of it. But anyway, tomorrow we're going to be talking with Phil Wilson at 10:45 about the benefits of sauna therapy. So that'll be fun. Bringing the body's internal core temperature up in order to induce the immune system to work more powerfully and to increase your heat shock proteins. 40% increase in immunity from increasing your body temperature, your core body temperature by 2 to 3 degrees. Or is it 2 degrees? I think it's just 2 degrees. 40% less all-cause mortality for people that do sauna therapy 4 to 7 times per week, according to Dr. Rhonda Patrick. So these are really cool. So anyway, we're going to talk with Phil Wilson about sauna therapy tomorrow. On Wednesday, we're going to talk with Bob Greska about C60, which is sort of like a buckyball, 16-sided buckyball, tiny, tiny molecule that is, I believe it's negatively charged, and it pulls positively charged bacteria, fungus, mold, yeast, parasites, these types of things out of the body. And according to some studies, 95% increase in lifespan from mice that take C60. So who knows? Does it translate to humans? We'll find out. I've been taking it, and we give it to our dogs now, and so it's kind of hard to tell, right? Because we've only been on it for a couple months. Then on Thursday, we've got Dr. Will Falconer. We'll be talking about natural pet care. So if you have a cat, a dog, I think he specializes in dogs, but we'll be talking about natural pet care from a holistic perspective. Dr. Will Falconer is an awesome guy. He's got a website called vitalanimal.com. Then on Friday, we'll talk with Jason Prawl about longevity secrets. This week is crazy. There's a show every single day. So if you're working and want to just watch the live show, 10:45 a.m. Every day Pacific time, is when all the shows are happening on our YouTube channel and Facebook page. Typically they're on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but we had some extra guests that really wanted to come on, and so we kind of altered our schedule a little bit and opened up those Tuesdays and Thursdays. Anyway, we love you guys. You guys are amazing. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys for checking out the Extreme Health Academy, for supporting us in our store. You guys are absolutely incredible, and also checking out the products that we sell. That's how we keep everything free. That's how we keep everything going on Extreme Health Radio. So let's see. A lot of people chatting here. It's not Jew therapy. It's JOOVV. Just so you know. Yeah, it's not Jew therapy. It's Juve, JOOVV. So if you guys want to learn more about red light therapy and how light affects your mitochondria, listen to some of the shows that we've done with Dr. Jack Cruz, one of the leading authorities on light and how light affects your mitochondria. So be prepared to have your life be changed. All right, guys, this was episode 606. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We love you all very, very much. You are amazing. We'll catch you guys tomorrow at 10:45 a.m. Pacific time, and we'll talk about the benefits of sauna therapy, of heat shock proteins, your immune system, all of that good stuff. So we love you a lot. Thank you again. And, oh, yeah, Kate says, the plunge tub, the furrow tub, Furo tub. Yeah, we just found out about that today. So it's like an upgraded tub that you can put your temperature to 45 degrees, or you can make it hot as well. And so you really want to induce mitochondrial change. You can do the furrow tub. Phyllis says, Chris Work, the author of Square One and the site Crispy Cancer, advises rebounding. Yeah, we've been advising rebounding, Phyllis, for years and years and years. Chris Work, I'm glad he's doing it as well. Rebounding is one of the best exercises you could do. Outside of probably yoga, walking, and swimming, rebounding as far as a next level exercise. Incredible for cleansing the lymph system, increasing bone density, increasing circulation, increasing endorphins. There's no other exercise like rebounding, and that's why I do it. You probably see me on our Instagram doing it almost every day. So I do it after my workouts outside. So, all right, guys, we love you all very, very much. I got to go. I got to go help Kate with the twins, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode. This will be tomorrow at 10:45 a.m. Pacific time, and you can join us on our YouTube channel, and we love you very much, and we'll see you soon.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any information in this blog or to start any health program without first consulting a health professional. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use,